Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So today I wanted to go ahead and read this article with you all. I often, when I'm reading articles, I'm looking at overall trends of fat acceptance and what they're trying to do. This one is fresh. This one is from January 7th of this year. And what I've noticed with a couple of the articles that I've read so far is there is a huge shift within messaging. For a long time, fat acceptance was actually co-opting body positivity, but now fat acceptance is looking to separate itself from body positivity, and it's trying to get rid of body positivity completely. So we're going to look at that within this article. Often when I'm doing these articles, they're research. Like it's more of research for my activism. So I'm going to have you guys join me today. So let's go. Body positivity taught us to love bigger bodies. So why do we all secretly still want to be skinny? The cult of super skinny is back, but what's to blame? Weight loss drugs or the body positivity movement that was supposed to oppose it? From the red carpet to my 13-year-old daughter's wardrobe, all the signs are there. Super skinny, that just slightly dangerously thin aesthetic once labeled heroin chic, is back in vogue. So, this is an issue because there isn't that objective defined thing. It's the same issue with saying fat. Super skinny can be different things to different people. So I have an issue with that because what they're often trying to do with these types of articles is they're trying to take your mind back to something or take your mind to something. But what is it that we're really looking at here? I think they should show a picture if they're going to talk about it. They should show something. But again, it's interesting when they try to do that because they're not allowed to shame anybody for their body, or they're not allowed to do anything like that. So there's all of these weird games that they play within fat acceptance. And I feel like they don't, they try to hide the fact that they're promoting obesity, basically, with these little games. So they can't show a picture because then they can't act like they're not judgmental of thin people, even though they are. So they have to just say super skinny to bring that flash in your mind, whatever that is to you, basically. It's strange. I'm a little tired. It's very late. So if I'm a little loopy and weird, I'm sorry. But we're doing it. I didn't like the way I filmed it before, so we're doing it again. We're doing it over, period. Okay. On their way out to do some shopping, my daughter and her friend are dressed in the same micro tees and low-slung baggy jeans that my own friends and I adopted in the 1990s, inspired by Kate Moss. I find this interesting too. There's such a projection on younger people, and I don't think that that's helpful. Because Gen Z, they're not going to have any connection to the 90s, really. Not at this point, they're not going to have the heroin chic or whatever. They're not necessarily going to know what any of that is. So I feel like there's this projection, which remember we talk about within toxic ritualistic behaviors or mindsets. This is more of a mindset thing. There's projection. So one of the things when you're on the binge side of the equation is you often will accuse other people of being overly restrictive. It's like a deflection mechanism. And I feel like that's what this is. And I don't think this is the case for Gen Z entirely, or to kind of make this like the whole generation of Gen Z is like super thin. That's just not true. It just isn't. It's a projection, in my opinion. And even plastic surgery trends suggest that we want to downsize. In the UK, as in the US, breast reduction is growing at a far faster rate than breast augmentation. As more and more celebrities jump on the shrinking bandwagon, calling out who may or may not be on slimming drugs has become an international pastime. Ariana Grande's appearance at the Wicked premiere last month sparked endless online speculation over whether she's ill, starving herself, or perhaps on weight loss drugs. Yes, but that's one person. Okay. It's not exactly like everybody ever is looking that way. The other thing that irritates me about these conversations is they act like Hollywood is literally everybody when that's not true. And I just get so frustrated with these articles sometimes when they do that. It's bizarre, especially this article, because I think this is UK. This is like British. And they're still so obsessed with Hollywood and stuff. It's just weird to me. No offense to anybody, but I don't know. It's just odd. It's like you should know that there's reality and like Hollywood. They're two different things. In The Spectator, one woman writer marveled at the implausibility that the character of Colin Bridgerton, handsome, rich, might fall for Nicola Coughlin's character, Penelope Featherington, in Bridgerton. Coughlin, she wrote, is not hot, and there's no escaping it. She's fat. Okay. Again, that's one person's opinion. It's strange. I feel like I wonder if fat acceptance thinks that everybody else exists in this hive mind, because I'm sure you could find like 50 bajillion articles about how hot she is too. You know what I mean? It just depends on what you look for. In my opinion, you could probably find people that are like, she's amazing, whatever, da, da, da. Then you find people who say she's horrible. And that's why I get a little bit, when I read these articles about body positivity, and especially the way that they're talking about it, they're so heavy-handed in their perception of reality, and they're really, really focused on you seeing what they see, even though you may not necessarily see that. And it's just so, like, obviously projection, in my opinion. And it's this reinforcement, like I said. Whereas if you look at reality objectively, I would say, so many people are so much fatter than they were 20 years ago. Clearly, people are not, in general, too skinny. That's not the issue, especially not in the United States, for example. So I don't even think I would ever even comment on this if I was looking at it objectively, because there's such a glaring issue of so many people being obese, not just in the US, but globally, and it getting more and more for so many years, that I feel like that would be a bigger priority or something that I would notice more if I was looking at things objectively. But instead, we have to focus on Ariana Grande being thin, and I can understand some of the criticisms. Maybe she is too thin. Maybe she's unhealthily thin. But it's a different discussion. It doesn't have to do with the obesity epidemic or any of these things. It's like you have to think. It's just weird how they try to project. Most people are not going through that. Most people are having the opposite issue. And they're trying, like, she's trying to say because Ariana Grande is possibly too thin, everybody's too thin now. And that's just not real. And I always consider these articles a form of reinforcement, because they expect you to be feeling this way, feeling like everybody's thin now and you're just the lone fat person, and what happened to our goal? What happened to what we were trying to do? That is not real. It's a certain shade of reality. It's a lens of looking at the world. In reality, there's always been fat people, thin people, people with E followed by the letter D, people who are too thin, people who are too fat, people who, are, there's just stuff all over the place. And it depends on what you're looking at. So I think it's all we can really look towards is what is the general trend. The general trend for a long time has been that people are getting fatter and fatter and fatter. But this person is not concerned at all about that issue. And in fact, that's good or seen as normal or seen as fine. You see, it's a bias. And I want you to see the bias in this article. That's what I'm trying to explain. The Spectator, I already read that. What happened to the body positivity movement we were all meant to embrace? Why were we meant to? Exactly. It's like you need to try to prove your case, not assume that everybody's on the same page as you. It's not good from a writing standpoint. I asked my daughter's friends, body positivity is a nice idea, says one, but no one actually believes it. We all have our own insecurities. We can't idealize them away. My friend Ellie, 3 decades older, put it this way. I fear true body positivity has never really existed unless you have a flippin' amazing body. I think that the issue I have with body positivity in general, there's some good in body positivity, there's some bad in body positivity. And I have to be clear, when I'm saying body positivity, I'm not talking about fat acceptance, because they have, like I said, co-opted that term and now they're trying to separate from the term. So it makes this discussion very confusing. What I think frustrates me about body positivity is one of the worst things about it is it tries to enforce a feeling about your body at all times, it is not natural. In most cases, to feel one way about anything all the time, forever and all the time, it just isn't natural. And for a lot of people who have toxic ritualistic behaviors, or people who have especially B followed by the letter E followed by the letter D, oftentimes they're eating in order to try to maintain an emotional state, or to try to manipulate an emotional state. And body positivity could create an incentive to try to maintain that positivity through eating. So it's bad. Now, where I think body positivity was good for people with toxic ritualistic behaviors was, in my case, the idea of living your life while fat is ultimately what helped me get through my triggers and get out onto the other side. And an example of that is when I used to watch Trisha Paytas back in like 2015, and she was doing like her music videos and just kind of living her life and doing things, even though it was seen as like, oh, well, she's fat. Why is she making a video? She's fat. It doesn't look good or whatever. She would do it anyways. And that kind of gave me the example where I could be like, yeah, I should just live my life too. But the idea I should just live my life while fat, it can lead you down any path. After that, you could get much worse or you could get better. I was lucky that eventually I got better, but a lot of people sunk very deep into fat acceptance. So body positivity, in my mind, it's always kind of a neutral thing, or it's overrated. It's always been kind of overrated, in my opinion. But it is better than fat acceptance. I'll put it to you that way. Okay, let's continue. What is body positivity anyways? So this part of the article, I read it before, like I told you guys. I don't think this is true. So I'm questioning this aspect of it. But I'm going to read it, and we're going to see what their narrative is, okay? The movement that most of us encountered, formed, and filtered on Instagram was actually born in 1960s America as the fat acceptance movement, says Dr. Kat Snyder, a research fellow at the Center for Appearance Research at the University of West of England. It was genuinely radical. centered around people in the most marginalized bodies in society, people in larger bodies, people of color, people with disabilities. When this fight for true body liberation, as Dan Schneider puts it, saw a resurgence in the 2010s, many were hopeful. Stephanie Yeboah, if I pronounced the name wrong, I'm sorry, author of The Fattily Ever After, a Black Fat Girl's Guide to Living Life Unapologetically, explained earlier this year just how radical it felt to be seeing plus-size Black women who look like her on social media. Everything I wore while younger was geared towards hiding my body or trying to make myself look smaller. And as I've entered this journey of self-love and newfound confidence, all I want to do is show my body off and just really wear pieces that make me feel confident in myself. Okay, so they're going with the, kind of the narrative of the fat Black women led the fat acceptance movement, which I've seen a lot of counter evidence to. And I do need to do an article about the origins of fat acceptance on this channel this month. That is a goal I have, because I think I need to be more familiar with it. And again, when I do these articles, that's when I do the research. But I do remember a video from a while back on, I think, like Fun Tea Times or something like that, the channel was. I watched that and that was fascinating. So anyways, I think that's what the channel was called. Okay. So what went wrong? In truth, the 2010s revival did lead to some superficial societal shifts, some larger clothing sizes in mainstream shops, for example, and a rise in mid-size models in adverts and on catwalks. Yet critics say it failed to shift the needle towards true self-acceptance. A Good Housekeeping survey of almost 3,000 women suggested that Gen Z aged 20 to 27 are now the most likely to embrace body positivity, while the so-called silent gen, those aged 79 and over, are the least. The latter is also the generation most likely to say they are bored with body positivity. Across the generations, 2/5 of women favor body positivity, yet an equal number want a more considered approach. Why? So I find it interesting whenever people are upset that people don't believe in body positivity or that people question it. It's odd to me. The way that it seemed to me, it was always supposed to be kind of optional, I guess. Or it's just like your view. I didn't see it as something that necessarily was enforced, whereas I see like fat acceptance is more enforced. And so I feel like that's part of when fat acceptance kind of invaded it, they started to change it. And it started to lose popularity fast because it was weird. Okay. Because I feel that enforcement there. Yeboah and others, including the singer Lizzo, have called out the commercialization of the movement. Mid-size models, wrote Yeboah, sent a clear message to the masses. It's okay to have body diversity as long as the curvy body you have is still seen as sexy and feminine to society. After all, was it such a stretch for vocal supporters of body positivity, like Jamila Jamil, the British presenter and actor, to shed their body hang-ups and embrace positivity, or neutrality, as Jamil has more recently advocated, as a complete, almost divorce from my body? They already epitomized many controversial ideals of beauty. Rather than championing marginalized bodies, the 2010s revival gave a platform to bodies that, if they challenged the norm at all, did so in soft and commercially viable ways. Think thin women with body rolls when they bend over, or cellulite that's visible at certain angles or in certain lights, says Schneider. So I think what body positivity originally was intending was a sense of reality. It was a sense of having a more realistic view of especially women's bodies, rather than the airbrushed and these types of things. But obviously it completely failed, and most people just use filters and tons of makeup and really try to change the way they look all the time now. So it completely failed. I think it was a total failure at this point. But again, I think it started to fail more as fat acceptance took it over and it lost popularity. And in my opinion, fat acceptance, if anything, created a backlash against body positivity because of how awful fat acceptance is. And I'm going to just flat out say that. That's also, I think, what could have happened, because I think a lot of it is out the window completely. And I'm very much a person that I advocate for reality. I advocate for, body neutrality, body realism. So being who we really are, or showing how we really are, type of thing. And just being real. If you got cosmetic work done and people are questioning it, then be honest about it. If if you're airbrushing a picture, be honest about it. If you're using filters, be honest about it. Like, I think a lot of that is it's gone kind of out the window. And I think that that's negative. I think people should just know, like, reality, because I think the further we get away from reality and we get to more of the let me just say it kind of censored, cornification, if we get more of that in life, it's just very toxic. I don't know. And I think that that's all been going on at once. But it's like we need to see people for how they actually are and just see how we actually are. And we can improve how we look in reality, too, through especially health. I think that's one of the best ways to do it. Just being healthier, having healthier habits, not drinking as much, not overeating, not undereating, taking care of ourselves, getting enough sleep and water and things like that. That all helps, and that's attainable. So I feel like we've lost touch with, I think, body positivity, if anything, not allowing ourselves to feel how we feel about our bodies. It has created even more of a disconnect. And I think for me, body neutrality helped me connect, because I just didn't feel any emotion about it, or I wouldn't feed into it. I just allow it to be. And I feel like when you allow your body to just be what it is, you don't have to force any kind of emotion around it, which, remember, E followed by the letter D, you are forcing an emotion about it. You're blowing it up. You're making it a big issue. You're making it a bigger issue than it is. It's not the most important thing in the world, but you're making it that. When you just let it be what it is, sometimes I feel happy with it. Sometimes I feel sad with it. Sometimes I feel anxious or not, but I don't ever fixate. And I make sure I think about something else, basically, because it's not something that needs to be suppressed, but it's certainly not something that needs to be obsessed over. And that's where I feel like that's kind of where the answer lies. You guys can let me know what you think. But I think not putting emotion into it is what's important. I think that's what's important. Because in reality, the emotional pitch of a feeling about your body is probably more like a 1 or 2, not a 10. Because again, your body is something that changes over a very slow course of time. So it shouldn't be a shock. You shouldn't look in the mirror and be like, it's not surprising. That's fake. That's a fake emotion. So I hope I'm being clear. Like I said, it is late and I'm trying to do this better than I did before. So, anyways. Okay. Then there was the question of responsibility. A majority of UK workers believe there is a weight bias at work, or researchers in multiple studies have found that overweight or obese patients are discriminated against by healthcare workers. Okay. Amanda Cooper is chair of the board of directors of the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance, a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the quality of life of people living with obesity. As she puts it, day to day, it matters to fat people that they might not be able to fit in public transportation or a school desk and are likely getting paid less if they are hired at all. So, I appreciate the concepts of physical reality. So, yes, it does matter to fat people if they can't fit on public transport, especially if they are depending on it, obviously. And a school desk, yes, because that's something that you face every single day. And I do think there should be as much accommodation as possible for those things. Again, it has to be what's practical and possible and what makes sense. Like for school especially, I suggest to have at least maybe like a couple desks where it's just the chair and the table where you can pull the chair out, rather than the one where it's all attached, because those are not fat friendly. And that is something that can be done. That's not a big deal, in my opinion. And then if those chairs are more reserved for that very fat student, or, very obese student, basically. I'll try to use the medical terms more so. That would actually be helpful. And I think that that is a possible thing to do. I don't think that that's impossible. So I think there are ways to advocate where it makes sense. But as far as if they're getting paid less or not, that's really subjective. That's individual. It depends. And it really depends on how they're getting to those statistics. Does it have to do with calling out of work more often? Does it have to do with working less hours? Does it have to do with not being able to hold a job due to health issues, right? These are all things that we have to consider when it comes to weight and pay, because it does interfere with your ability to work for most people at a super morbidly obese place, especially. Okay. Okay. Yet, rather than challenging these systemic biases, the movement put the responsibility for change squarely on the shoulders of larger people themselves. Love your body more, the message suggested, and all will be fine. The world outside, however, remained the same, and then weight loss drugs arrived. And as Schneider notes, the playing field changed. Not because social ideals had been reformed, but because we found a new power to change ourselves in order to meet them. Okay, this is very gaslighty, okay? A new power. That is not true. That's false. You've always been able to lose weight. You don't need Ozempic to lose weight. That's fake. This is a false narrative. It's not new. People have lost weight since the dawn of time. People have gained and lost weight since people have existed. That is not true. So that's bullshit. Okay? Gaslighty. But you see how they lead you so much in an article like this. And you would read it and you'd be like, oh yeah, it is a new power to change ourselves. No, we've always been able to. Lies. But can we blame the drugs? I had dinner with friends not long ago. One, let's call her Annabelle, looked fabulous. She praised the nutritionist a mutual friend had introduced her to. As soon as I got home, I fired off an email. Please share the name of the nutritionist. You look amazing. What haunted me once I read her reply was that my initial thought was, good for Annabelle. She's really taken control. She had indeed taken matters into her own hands. The glow I'd noted might be down to the nutritionist, she said, but it also might be down to the Botox and fillers she'd had to plump up her face following the dramatic weight loss from taking Ozempic. semaglutide. I say semaglutide because I'm American. Following a lifetime of poor body image and 2 pregnancies, Annabelle finally had the slender frame she wanted. She's one of quite a few friends I have who have praised the drug semaglutide for allowing them to be the size they want. So, remember, this is not required to not be fat. I'm going to just say it over and over. I know it pisses people off, but it is not required. That is a toxic ritualistic mindset. It is not required to lose weight. It can make it easier, maybe. In some ways it's easier, in other ways it's harder, if we look at it objectively. But you could lose it without it. I'm going to keep saying it because this article is turning into another Ozempic commercial in the midst of it, and I don't like that either. But you see how fat acceptance and Ozempic overglorification are weirdly aligned, and it's very bizarre. And I have heard a lot of you guys talk about more corporate connections of fat acceptance, and sometimes I wonder even more so, because is there this sort of shadow corporate drive to get people to gain a bunch of weight to then sell the solution later? Because it's very bizarre how often fat acceptance articles like this one promote Ozempic and overglorify it even. It's very bizarre. Super bizarre. Following a lifetime of poor... I already read that. Originally developed to treat patients with type 2 diabetes and reduce specific cardiovascular risks, semaglutide was found to make patients feel fuller for longer and reduce hunger pangs. There are plenty of ways to do that, including having a nutritious diet, for example. I know. It's wild. Semaglutide, marketed as Wegovy, was licensed for weight loss by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration in 2021. And 2 years later, the UK's National Institute for Health and Care Excellence concluded that Wegovy was a safe, effective, and affordable way to treat obesity for the NHS. If you want to get it from them, you must have a BMI of over 35. Go private, however, and you can obtain it for just over £100 a month, with far fewer strings attached. And a lot of people, it turned out, wanted to try the so-called skinny jab. By some estimates, 1 in 8 adults in the U.S. have tried Ozempic or a similar drug for weight loss. There are no comprehensive estimates for the UK, where Ozempic is not licensed for weight loss, but for type 2 diabetes. Still, diabetes charities have warned that off-label prescriptions for semaglutide to address weight loss have caused shortages of the drug. Okay. Amanda Cooper explains that the vast majority of press inquiries her organization receives at the moment are about weight loss drugs. From where we sit, a big problem that people are trying to live comfortably in their bodies at any size are facing is an onslaught of media content about how weight loss drugs are changing people's lives and how they feel about their bodies. This I have an issue with too. So not everybody's going to feel that way. Most people that don't have any kind of toxic ritualistic mindsets, behaviors, etc., they hear somebody's Ozempic story and they think, oh, that's nice. Okay, whatever. And they move on with their day. Somebody that has these issues, they obsess over it. It becomes a part of their inner monologue. And so the idea that somebody else taking a drug would affect your ability to live comfortably in your body is not sensical or logical. That's a whole other level. That is toxic. That is disordered. Okay, and I'm going to be honest, it is. If it's something that truly, truly bothers you, I understand people that they feel good about the drug or they criticize the drug. That's a little bit different. Like I said, I take more of a neutral approach with the drug. I think it's good in some cases and bad in others, which is it's a pretty boring opinion, honestly, which is why I don't typically talk about Ozempic, or I don't talk about it that much. Although, of course, fat acceptance, they're obsessed with it. They're absolutely obsessed. They see it as the end of their movement and all this stuff, which is not even true. There's still tons of fat people, and there's literally like in institutions and all this stuff, and they're trying to change medical, and like Virgie Tovar's talking to young doctors in America and all this stuff. Like, it's not real. Like, they're doing plenty of stuff that's for fat acceptance. It's just more in the institutional level. And I'm just leaving that there, I guess. I think it's deceptive, honestly, because what do you think this article is for? Do you think this article is for somebody who's taking Ozempic, or do you think this article is for a fat woman especially to read? This is on goodhousekeeping.com, which is obviously probably a website geared towards women. So this is for a fat woman to read and be reinforced that she's a better person or something for staying fat. It is fat enforcement. It is E followed by the letter D, reinforcement. That is what this article is, which is horrible. I cannot stand it. But it's dressed up like it's something, oh, it's, this is a really educational thing. It's not. It really isn't. Okay. Carrie Jones, a psychotherapist and CEO and founder of the Ori ED Treatment Clinic, agrees that the popularity of weight loss drugs as a quick fix is troubling. For weight loss injections to be effective and safe as part of a weight loss strategy, she stresses they must be embedded in a multidisciplinary approach. If not, she says, there is a risk that weight loss drugs could be misused or exacerbate existing issues rather than addressing the root causes of weight and health challenges. I appreciate that. That shocked me that was in the article. I was actually really surprised. So while there's still a lot of BS in this article, that is one shining moment, because that has always been my concern with the drug as well, is people with E followed by the letter D abusing it, or people using those mindsets and using the drug badly rather than seeing it as something supplemental in an overall health journey and an overall weight loss strategy. They use it as the be-all, end-all. It's not good. Okay. A drug designed to improve health could be used to worsen it. And perhaps that's really the point. Okay, there's the article. I'm trying to take you back, right? As much as we may protest to the contrary, we don't want healthy bodies. We want beautiful ones. And we will go to great lengths to get one. Writer. If you are concerned with healthy bodies, then you would be concerned with obesity because it isn't healthy. So you could also replace this and say, we don't want healthy bodies. We want ones that we can obsess over. We want ones that we can justify our overeating or overall laziness. We want bodies that we can play with in this toxic way where we're constantly doing the slot machine of weight loss and in E followed by the letter D, or we want bodies that don't take any effort and we can neglect. That's the real issues. Rather than wanting to look good is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sorry, there just isn't. It's all the other stuff. It's the neglect It's the messing with your system. That's what's bad. It's the, I want to look this way, quote unquote, so I'm going to do whatever it takes, even if it harms me. Which again, remember, it makes you look worse anyways. And people that use Ozempic and don't use it well, they tend to look worse because they're not taking care of themselves. There's still a neglect. And it's the same thing with E followed by the letter D. You can try to gaslight yourself into thinking you're looking better, but you often look worse because you're less healthy over time and it wears you down. For example, I have bone density issues. I have teeth issues from my past because I lost bone from the stuff I did. And people don't talk about that stuff, but it's important. That's not healthy. It isn't healthy. That's not cute. It's not funny. It's something I'm working on to the best of my ability. I signed up for health insurance finally. So I'm going to go to the dentist and get my work done and stuff that I need to do as a part of my overall recovery this year. But it's like, because I haven't had insurance since 2020. But it's like, you have to understand that when you do these things, you're not healthy. And even if you're trying to look good, health looks good. Always pursue health first. You don't have to be insane about it. Don't let your pursuit of health become unhealthy. But it is a good thing to strive for. It absolutely is. Because you want to be a good steward of your body. You want to not neglect your body. You want to take care of your body. And your body will reward you to the best of its ability. I feel like so many of these discussions, they frame our bodies as the enemy. And they're not. Our body just wants us to survive. That's all. That is all. And oftentimes when we are messing with these toxic ritualistic behaviors, we are fucking with our survival mechanisms. It isn't cute. And there are consequences. There are absolutely consequences. Thomas Midgley, founding director of the Body Image Treatment Clinic and a CBT and compassion-focused psychotherapist, specializes in ED and has noted a marked shift in his London clinic because of the rise in popularity of weight loss drugs. He is concerned that semaglutide may have a negative impact on body acceptance in the short term, but he also takes a long view. Throughout history, he says beauty standards and their power have been set according to which shape is the hardest to achieve in the time and context. For example, people wanted to be more voluptuous when there was rationing of food, he says. In fact, Midgley is already seeing a shift in goals. If history is to repeat, we are likely to see the return of heroin chic, followed by a shift towards more muscular and curvy figures, once thin is more widespread and too easy to achieve with medication. In our practice, we are already seeing a trend of female clients with a long history of Anna shifting to powerlifting and bodybuilding, and thus the cycle continues. So, I don't completely agree with this. I think there are some universal standards of health, and health is tied to beauty. It just is, whether it's, male or female or whatever. Okay, let's continue. I'm just saying there are some aspects, like, for example, having musculature and being relatively lean as a male, I think has always been something that's attractive all across the board. Same thing with a woman who has nice boobs and a butt. Okay. I think that's always been attractive all across the board. So I feel like when they're looking at like the way he's describing it, it's trying to separate us from our biological reality as human beings, and I just think that's stupid. It's not completely cultural. It just isn't. There are cultural influences upon it, but that kind of hardware underneath always runs through. It just does. So it's frustrating the way that that's talked about. Okay. For decades, the body positivity movement, pioneered by courageous women and cleverly embraced by some major beauty brands, has been trying to build a different, more inclusive culture about acceptable female body shapes. But a landmark study by GH of thousands of women from right across the generations has revealed that, regardless of their age, only 1 in 3 women are content with their body shape, and a further 1 in 4 are embarrassed by it. Perhaps more surprising is that fewer than half agree that it's important to celebrate every size and shape. So how can we start to overcome our stubbornly negative self-image? What I will say is, don't obsess. Embrace reality. So where you're at. Understand that there are some improvements you can make. There are some improvements you can't, or maybe shouldn't, or whatever, depending on the context. And you just kind of go from there. I've always been a person where I just advocate for people to do the best they can, and you'll get there. It's not impossible to not be obese. It just isn't. And I'm trying to show you guys I'm going to get there this year. I'm not going to be obese anymore. And I think it's important, no matter what, that we stay in reality. And I think a lot of times people don't do that with this issue, and it's frustrating. But I will go ahead and end it there. Let me know what you think, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Peace.